think I'll call us to order. My name's Andrew Scheil from the faculty of Department of English, and I'm the chair of the CLA Assembly for this academic year. And a very simple agenda for today. It's not truly the first CLA Assembly meeting. That'll be October 24th. And so those of you who are on CLA Assembly, you'll get the email notices in the usual fashion. Today we simply have the State of the College speech by Dean Coleman, and after his speech we'll have a short Q&A and then reception outside in this room in the gallery. So without further ado, I'll turn this over to Dean John Coleman, who'll give the State of the College speech.
Well, thank you, Andy. This is my fourth State of the College address, and this is always a time that we reflect a bit on where the college has been, some of the accomplishments over the last year, and some of the things that we'll be working on in the upcoming year. I don't want to bog you down with sort of the weeds and details, so I am going to give you a couple of other places to get bogged down in weeds and details if that's what you would like to do. We have a couple of roadmap progress reports that I would encourage you to check. They're both online. They both start with z.umn.edu. One of them is /roadmap 2017. The other is roadmap progress. Roadmap progress is particularly detailed. It really gives a fairly comprehensive list of the things we've been doing over the last 3 years. The roadmap report is something that is designed a little bit more for donors. We'll be going out to them soon, and is a bit more focused on the last year, and also ties into our capital campaign that I'll be talking about in a moment. So today the idea is to be at a little bit more of a elevated level, I guess you'd say, a little bit above the day-to-day details, though we will get into that a little bit as well. So it's a good time to think about our purpose, what drives us, what our values are, and how we take these into the next stage of the capital campaign, of our own internal planning, and into our 150th anniversary, which is coming up next year. As you all know, of course, we are part of a land-grant institution, and in the public discourse on land grants, you hear a lot about what I guess I would think of as the mechanical, engineering, technical side of that, or maybe the agricultural as well, and bringing that out to communities. And those are all absolutely important pieces of that puzzle. But the land-grant mission, as defined originally, and as we hope sustained over time, was really fundamentally rooted in liberal education. It was fundamentally rooted in the idea of bringing liberal education to a wider group of people in society. It was a profoundly democratizing force. It was trying to make sure that education, higher education, was not the sole province of the elite, of the wealthy. And liberal arts were fundamentally at the center of that. The idea was that through higher education, you were helping people learn how to govern themselves, how to grow their communities, and how to grow personally as well through their careers, through their knowledge, and so on. So this was a powerful movement, a powerful idea and concept designed to help individuals prosper and designed to help communities prosper and develop as well. And I think it's important for us to remember, and when we hear it in public discourse, to remind people that at its root, this was about liberal education and liberal arts, and it was about bringing research also from liberal education and liberal arts into the community to be of assistance to community partners where that was possible. Our CLA Constitution, in its preamble, directly references this particular purpose, saying that the purpose of the College of Liberal Arts is to advance a thoughtful, knowledgeable, and engaged society. So we view that land-grant mission as a fundamental piece of what we are. And it's important to me that we don't let others forget that we are at the center of that mission. With this idea, when we talk about transformation through the land grant, we're talking not only about the transformation of the individual, but the transformation of communities, future generations, families, and so on. So that's our purpose. That's what we believe is at the center of our role is to, as the CLA Constitution says, to play this role in individual and community development. So how does that idea from 1862 translate into what we're doing today? It's no news to anybody in the room that we are in a period of tremendous discord, debate, disagreement, fracture, call it what you will. But there's a lot of intense tensions and divisions in our society. So if the land grant idea was intended to give people control over their lives, to give them the ability to develop themselves, develop their communities, engage in civic and public life, then the liberal arts, I would say, have never been more important and more fundamentally valuable to the work that the country needs to do. Because it is the kind of skills that are, and the knowledge that's developed in the liberal arts that is going to be needed to move through and to wrestle with this particularly fractious and difficult time. For CLA, the way that I think of this is that the meaning is quite plain. Ours is not a selfish enterprise. We don't do what we do because of ourselves. We don't do it simply to make ourselves more notable, make ourselves more wealthy, make ourselves more prominent, popular, or whatever it might be. We do the work that we do. We commit ourselves to the goals of the CLA roadmap of relentlessly pursuing research and creative excellence, deepening our culture of engagement, enhancing our diversity and inclusion, and making sure our students are ready for productive lives after they leave the university. All of that is a sign that our focus is on others and not necessarily on ourselves. Doesn't mean we have to neglect ourselves, but that our focus is fundamentally on others. When we talk about a destination college, we're also talking about this idea that we want something, we're building something for others to come and to prosper in so that they can build their lives in a more productive way. Again, it's not to flatter ourselves about what we do. As a destination college, we're trying to attract and retain the best faculty in the world, top students, top staff, and to have them be part of our community. We are trying to build and develop the strongest creative work and research that we can. We are trying to make our graduates ready for their life after college. We're trying to include a diverse range of people and ideas, and we're trying to be deeply engaged in our communities. We add all of that, the higher quality impact we will have. It's not simply to say we're better at research, we're now more inclusive, we're now more engaged, but that actually makes a difference in our society. It's a destination for good, if you will. It's not just to create a destination so that we can have that label on our marketing materials, but that we actually think that makes a difference in the world around us. So to me, it's quite important that we think of ourselves as a destination college and that we think of it as outward looking in terms of what we're trying to create. I think it does make it a great place to work. It does make it very fulfilling and exciting. It does lead to a lot of victories that we can celebrate. Fundamentally, it's like the land grant mission. We are thinking about how do we affect the communities around us. So all of us in this room are in the business of helping people to transform and improve their lives. It means our students, but it also means everybody in this room. It means our fellow staff and faculty. It means the nonprofits, the government agencies, the businesses, the schools, and so on, the communities that we work with. Because there really wouldn't be much point to doing all this work if we weren't enabling all of us to improve our lives and progress. The strongest asset that we bring to this equation is the work that we do in the liberal arts. And I know that sounds like a fairly obvious thing to say, but I do think it's important to say. we're not playing this fundamentally important role despite of, or in spite of, the questions that we ask and the things that we study in the liberal arts. Our strength is precisely in the questions that we ask and the way that we ask them and the range in which we ask. That's why we say we don't apologize for what we do in the liberal arts. We advocate it, and we say that it's our greatest strength. Our whole career readiness program is based around the idea that there's a liberal arts advantage. Not that you're making up deficits that would come if you were taking engineering or some other discipline, but that you have a set of advantages that come from you from being a liberal arts student. So we believe in the College of Liberal Arts that the skills and the knowledge and the mindset that you develop through liberal arts education is what sets you on the path to a successful and fulfilling and engaged life. It's important for us to remind ourselves and to remind those outside our own CLA community that every day we're exploring questions that matter to people in their day-to-day lives. We're looking at the kind of questions that drive people's lives, and that's across our various disciplines. There's not a day that goes by when the front page of the newspaper isn't full of stories that you can think about as stories that the liberal arts can add more perspective on and more understanding to. And it's obviously not limited to the front page, but through the entire paper. But the more I think about it and the more I look at it and soak in it a bit, it is truly remarkable what having a range of disciplines and a range of interdisciplines can do for understanding and for understanding the world around you. So we're not asking questions that are off to the side, that are up in the clouds, that are over here. We're asking questions that fundamentally matter for the things that really are valuable to people in their day-to-day life. Importantly, these kinds of questions are raised across all of our disciplines, in the arts, in the humanities, and in the social sciences. They're not the province of any one part of our college, and those areas working together productively as well. All of our scholars, all of our creative artists in CLA are helping our students understand what it means to live a productive, caring, and successful life. And we also are discussing that and sharing that outside the walls of CLA as well. We focus in our fields of research on enduring questions that the liberal arts have been focused on for hundreds or thousands of years, hundreds at the very least. And we focus on questions that are emergent and new. So again, unlike some other disciplines, some other colleges that have different focus, ours is truly one that is building on history at the same time that it is changing the trajectory of knowledge through asking new questions. So what we do is that we help people to transform and improve their lives. That's basically our business, as I see it. So what's different about CLA? Because you could say this of a lot of land-grant institutions, perhaps, and maybe you could say the same thing about a lot of liberal arts schools. There's a lot of strong land-grant and liberal arts institutions around. So what's different about CLA? Let me point to two things that I think are different that have particularly struck me in my time here in the college that I think, and these are just two, there's others you could point to, that set us apart on one or both of these dimensions from many of the other colleges that are land-grant or liberal arts. The first is our focus on access, and the second is our collaborative interdisciplinary culture. Let me talk first about access. CLA educates more students than any other Minnesota college, public or private. We are nearly half of, or at the undergraduate level, we're nearly half of the students on the Twin Cities campus. We're at 45%. Transfer students make up 40% of the college's undergraduate population. Students who, for whatever reason, needed to start at another institution. Either they weren't admitted here, they couldn't afford to come here, their plans changed, whatever it might have been. So 40%. We always have to be mindful of that, I think. Nearly a third of CLA students are the first in their families to go to college. Just under a quarter of CLA students are students of color. Looking across the Twin Cities campus, as I mentioned, we're 45% of the students total, but we have a higher percentage than that of women, students of color, American Indian students, African American students, Hispanic, Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students, multiracial, international, first generation, Pell eligible, and transfer. So those groups, as a percentage of the Twin Cities population, were higher than 45%. American Indian students, for example, were about 75% of all American Indian students on the Twin Cities campus are in this college. What I say about CLA often, and many in this room have heard me say this before, and it falls right out of these statistics, that we are the opportunity college, certainly in the state of Minnesota, and I would argue more broadly across the upper Midwest, that we are the opportunity college, where we are diverse, more so than any other college on this campus or in the state. We are receptive to students who had to start elsewhere, whether it's for reasons of finance or for academic preparation or whatever it might have been. We are the gateway to people living these productive lives. I think that's an amazing role for a college to play. I think it's an inspiring role for a college to play. I'm all about thinking of ways that we can level the playing field. Our career readiness program is heavily based on that idea. How do we help students who didn't have the family advantages be ready, who don't have the networks through their parents be ready? And there's nothing wrong with having a network, but I want to find ways for our students who don't have that to succeed as well. And I think this is resonating with students. This fall, continuing the trend of the past few years, we are over our target, our university-approved target for incoming students by 200 students. And I will say, just like the liberal arts, I don't apologize for that either. I'm glad we're 200 students over the target that we were given. And I think it is because students, career counselors, guidance counselors in high schools and so on are seeing what we're doing here and seeing that it's different from what they see at some other institutions, and they're impressed with that work and they're sending them to us. I have had counselors tell me this directly, that it was not long ago that they wouldn't have been sending students to the University of Minnesota, and now they do. So, and these are students who are applying to the other top liberal arts colleges in this region and in the country. All of that is because of you. It's because of the work that you do. It's because of the help that you provide our students. It's because of the great communication you do with potential students, but beyond just getting the word out about the great work that's going on in CLA. I do think it's about the Career Readiness Initiative and the work that we're doing there and have done there. And I have to credit Gary Ohlert, Oskan Kerner, Judy Anderson, Paul Timmons, and many other faculty and staff at the college level and throughout the departments that have been deeply engaged in this initiative and have really taken it on as a matter of purpose and value. And it really has made a difference, and our students absolutely are receptive, quite receptive to it. The other thing that has struck me since I've been here is the interdisciplinary culture that we have, the collaborative interdisciplinary culture we have in the College of Liberal Arts. Interdisciplinary is a term that every institution will use and will talk about. It is really in the, it's in the fiber of this college, certainly in this institution, for people to think about interdisciplinary connections. Now, before I get into that, let me be clear. I believe very strongly in strong disciplines. So this is not an either-or proposition. You have to have strong discipline, in my view. You have to have strong disciplines in order to have strong interdisciplinary activity. It matters to me that we have our departments highly ranked and that they're considered among the best in their disciplines in the country and around the world. It's a good thing that we have a half dozen departments that are in the Shanghai global rankings as the top 25 in the world. It's a good thing that we have 15 of our departments and subfields that are in the top 25 of the various U.S. News and World rankings, U.S. News and World Report rankings. Now, they don't rank every discipline. None of these services do that. But I think those are very strong indicators that we have a lot going on here in our disciplines that is very positive. Those have to be, we have to protect that, we have to build it, and I'd like to see more, see those numbers grow. So this whole thinking about interdisciplinary work for me starts from that premise that the disciplines absolutely have to be fundamentally strong, and that we work with our departments, particularly through the 3-year planning process, but not only then, to make sure that they are able to achieve the excellence that we think that they can. But our scholars and creative artists are also crossing across the silos within CLA and across the campus as well. Our researchers, including extensively in the campus's Grand Challenges Research Initiative, are working with colleagues in science and engineering and management, in design and education and human development, in public health and in the medical school, in agricultural and natural resource sciences, and I'm sure others as well. In other words, pretty much anywhere you care to look on this campus, you will find CLA faculty working with faculty and researchers of other colleges. So both in these areas of access and in interdisciplinary work, we tie back to our foundation as a land-grant institution that's dedicated to improving individual lives and to serving our communities. And this is important because when communities seek to engage with us at the highest quality level, they don't worry about department lines. They don't care about college lines. They don't care about administrative offices. They just want to find fruitful partnerships that will help them and where they feel they can help the university. So it's important that we have this interdisciplinary collaborative culture that's already in place here, because it actually makes it easier for us to be good at engagement, because we're not spending a lot of time telling people, well, you really need to go to this department for this one for that, this one for this. You better contact these 3 offices. We can't do that because that's education and human development, and so on and so forth. We try not to say that to people. And that's because of who we are and the values that we have in this interdisciplinary arena. To give you 2 examples of some of the great work that we do on the interdisciplinary side, let me just mention 2 recent initiatives that have happened within the past few years. And to be totally clear, I can't take any credit for these other than saying I think that's a good idea, and other people doing all the work to make it happen. So I just happened to be fortunate enough to be here while it happened. First, we've established a master's in human rights with the Humphrey School that has been up and running now for 2 years, designed for practitioners who are going to go out into NGOs, government agencies, and so on. That builds a lot, not only with Humphrey and CLA, but within CLA, builds on the strength across a number of our departments in human rights scholarship and research. Secondly, this fall, we launched a master's degree in public heritage studies and public history with the College of Design. The new heritage studies master's is also intended to be essentially a professional applied master's degree. Professors Kat Hayes of Anthropology and American Indian Studies and Kevin Murphy of American Studies and History deserve a lot of our credit and thanks for leading this initiative. Many others were involved as well, but they were tireless in their efforts to make this happen. And this initiative grew out of a felt need in the community. It wasn't the college deciding to create a program and then hoping that there was a need. People in the heritage, museum, cultural institution category, industry, if you will, sector, were concerned about the lack of a diverse pipeline coming in to those institutions as the country was becoming increasingly diverse and as more institutions were trying to diversify what they do as well in terms of their holdings and programming and so on. So in partnership with the Minnesota Historical Society, the College of Design and the College of Liberal Arts has created this program designed to provide and produce and educate the professionals that the public heritage sector is so badly needing, and it seems like it will be the wave of the future in terms of needed demand. So it's serving a very fundamental purpose in our communities. And I think this is also a good example of an area where we have lowered the boundary around the campus, where an external partner, the Minnesota Historical Society, knew that they could work with us effectively and that they didn't have to worry too much about the jurisdictional lines. Amelia White, our Director of Public Engagement, has a remarkably strong relationship with the folks at the Minnesota Historical Society, and that has led to a lot of good across the college. So in CLA, we are committed to access, we're committed to interdisciplinary work, and we're committed to excellence. And that's who we are as a college. So if that's who we are, what's next for this college that prizes these and values these and is deeply engaged in the land grant mission? What do we do next? Well, first thing we'll be doing is drawing on what we've already done, of course. And this is not exciting, but it's important for me to say. We have made, over the course of the past few years, a number of structural changes in the college. We have built and reorganized our organizational infrastructure, our administrative infrastructure, to a significant degree to advance our work and to advance the CLA roadmap. So if you look across our administrative offices, virtually everyone from undergraduate education to research and graduate programs, institutional advancement to fiscal administration, human resources, liberal arts, technologies, and innovation services, and the Office of Faculty and Academic Affairs. Each and every one of them has gone through some kind of reorganization, or is right now, over the past few years, all designed to try to build a more effective and more collaborative administrative structure to help us to achieve the goals that we set out in the CLA roadmap, as well as obviously to more effectively perform our day-to-day work. So that work, there's been a lot of it. A lot of that obviously goes under the sort of under the surface. You don't necessarily see it. If you're in the offices, you certainly see it, but others outside don't necessarily see it. But that really mattered and made a difference, and it has changed the way that people have worked, and I hope and I believe it's put us in a better position to be successful. We've also made major structural changes through our corridor structure, which ties in with many of these offices, which have also aligned themselves around the corridor structures for reporting purposes, and through the introduction of 3-year department planning, where we sit down with every department to work through how they are trying to achieve the goals that they have set out and where the college can be partnering with them to make that happen. In addition to those large structural changes and to some of the major initiatives we've already done, increasing graduate stipends, creating a grant program for associate professors, the Career Readiness Initiative, cluster hires in human rights, Islamic studies, and through the RIGS initiative, we've also tried to find ways to be more flexible and nimble as an organization to respond to opportunities to fund pilot programs, to provide seed grants for various initiatives. And I think over the course of the past year, we've had some good success on that front. We awarded 25 small grants in the area of diversity and inclusion and engagement, and these went out to departments or to individual faculty or groups of faculty who wanted to try out an idea around public engagement or around diversity and inclusion. And we are now receiving the reports from these, and we'll see what people have learned, what worked, what didn't maybe work so well, what we might build on, whether any of these are ideas that we may want to pursue more systematically going forward. Separately, Associate Dean for Social Sciences, Penny Edgell, supported a number of diversity and inclusion initiatives, as well as some seed funding for research, to give you this, and these were, and again, these were sort of short time. It didn't require you to submit a 30-page application that took 18 months to review. It was trying to move things along quickly so that we could get the resources out to people quickly. To give you one example of these, a joint pipeline project between political science, history, and sociology is establishing connections with historically black colleges and universities to try to enhance graduate student recruitment. Really interesting idea. There'll be some guests coming in this fall to meet with our faculty and our departments, and we'll see where that leads. But it's an exciting concept, and I think it's a great, it was a great idea on Associate Dean Edgell's part to fund that particular project. On the arts and humanities, in the arts and humanities corridor, to give you two examples, Associate Dean, former Associate Dean Anna Paula Ferreira provided support for the Environmental Humanities Initiative, which brings together humanistic scholars, artists, and teachers across a wide array of related fields, broadly motivated by concerns about the environment. She also provided some seed funding for the Middle East and Islamic Studies Collective, which is intended to advance knowledge of the Middle East and Islamic studies, including language, literature, and cultural studies. The college also, in the past year, launched its Interdisciplinary Collaborative Workshops initiative, and this has been led by Steve Manson, the Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Programs. The first set of mini-grants in this program were announced back in the spring, supporting projects on embedded technologies, music as cultural research, and municipalism in America. We are right now receiving, or I should say Steve and his office are right now receiving the proposals for another round of these mini-grants, which are up to $10,000, and also the first round of full grants, which run $50,000 to $100,000 and are intended to run over the course of a few-year period. So again, this is trying to pull people together where an idea has emerged, and there's some short-term funding provided that can encourage people to come together. Maybe it helps apply for other funds through a foundation or through some other granting agency, or it has a life of its own for 3 years, and that's it, and people move on. We're very open to what these might be. We're not trying to put too many restrictions on how they evolve. So we'll continue over the course of the next year to think about ways that we can pilot these, that we can fund these pilot and seed initiatives. And we will continue to support efforts that the departments propose as well in their 3-year planning. So just to give you a couple of examples, over the past couple of rounds, we provided some funding for a diversity initiative in the Department of Philosophy. We provided some short-term funding for an initiative in the School of Statistics to essentially create an institute of applied statistics, which has already been up and active. So those will be on our agenda for the coming year. We also, over the course of the coming year, will be launching our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, the college level committee. A number of our departments have, I think it's a great sign, a number of our departments have created these committees as well, and the college will now be building off of that strength. We will be continuing our effort to integrate learning abroad more closely in with the academic majors and with student career readiness. Michal Kobiaka of Theater and Dance has really been leading the charge on that. I encourage all the chairs here to invite him into your department to talk about how learning abroad can tie more closely into the major in your department and how you might be able to, or we might be able to add some career readiness aspects to that experience for students as well. We will also be planning for what we hope will be the arrival of some changes in the sabbatical system. As you know, this is somewhat on hold now, but assuming that it will happen someday, we want to be ready for that, where we'll have what I would consider to be standard, fully funded semester-long sabbaticals for our faculty. So we just want to be ready with that in terms of the finance and the organization. We can't have the whole college go on sabbatical in the first year that becomes available, so we have some practicalities to work through. There's a lot of people who haven't taken sabbaticals because the funding system right now is not very attractive for taking sabbaticals. So we know there'll be a large pent-up demand for that, and continuing to find ways to enhance support for faculty travel, which I know is one of the ongoing concerns and frustrations that people have. So I consider all of that to be progress made, progress that we hope will be made over the course of the next year. So how else are we thinking about moving forward? Earlier, I mentioned our 150th anniversary and our capital campaign. So let me talk a little bit about those. Both of them, I think, are great opportunities for us to reflect on where we are as a college, but more importantly, where we want to go and what we want to achieve. The planning is underway for an array of events for our 150th anniversary. Professors Joni Smith of Theater Arts and Dance, John Freeman of Political Science, and Ana Forcenito of Spanish and Portuguese have been leading the effort on the academic planning side of this for symposia and other events that will really highlight the academic issues. We'll also have some more outward-facing things for alums and so on as well. And their focus is very much, not so much on looking back over the past and what did happen in 1923 after all, but to actually think about 2023 and 2033 and 53 and so on. Where are the liberal arts now, and what have we learned, and where might they be headed? So they are working on what looks to be a very exciting program for us, and all of that will be happening next year. We're also soon to launch the CLA Capital campaign. You probably heard that the university's overall campaign was formally announced last week, and each of the colleges also has its own campaign happening at the same time with its own set of goals and priorities. And we will be launching ours on November 4th. The tagline for our campaign is Shattering Expectations, and you've seen that phrase used in a lot of our materials already, where we've been talking about how we are trying to get people to rethink their views of the liberal arts, rethink what's possible, rethink what the liberal arts means and its application and relevance to the day-to-day lives and to the important issues that we're facing. So we feel like we're doing a good job of helping to shatter people's expectations and to help them think bigger and to think more productively about the liberal arts, about the things that we can accomplish and that we can do. So we're adopting that tagline of thinking bigger and better and greater through Shattering Expectations for our campaign as well. I will say the videos and things that we've done with the Shattering Expectations theme have been extremely well received by our alums and by our donors. They find it all very inspiring to see the kind of work that happens in liberal arts and the kind of questions that we wrestle with in this college. So all of this work in the campaign will be building directly off of all the work that you've done and all of the faculty and staff across the college in the CLA roadmap. That is to say that we're tying the campaign goals very strongly to what we're trying to achieve in our roadmap, which of course makes great sense. The campaign for the college has a goal of $150 million. The campaign will run another 4 years. It runs through 2021. 65 million of that is targeted to research, innovation, and engagement. 50 million to student support and student success, and 35 million to initiatives around access and inclusion. So some of the kinds of things that will be included in this campaign that will be priority areas for us aren't necessarily surprising if you think of those categories. We're looking to endow faculty chairs, to provide research funds, to provide the support funds for collaborative workshops like the ones that we're launching now that we can do for a short period of time. But at some point, we need donors to come in and help to sustain those over a longer period of time. And the various grant programs that we're doing and hoping to initiate as well for our faculty and our grad students as well. For our students, we have several items of the Career Readiness Initiative that we're seeking funding for. We want much more, try to get much more support for internships, for students doing research, for study abroad, and the like, so that students are able to tie these experiential opportunities into their liberal arts experience. We're also, so that's more or less at the college level that we're seeking those out. But we're also working with departments as well, and I will be working with and for departments as well. So all of our departments are working on their own set of priorities as well. What would they like to see funded in a capital campaign? What would they like us to put in front of potential donors? And maybe it's many of the same things that I mentioned, but there might be some other things as well that we hope are at least consistent with the CLA roadmap, so it doesn't seem like too much of a tangent to the people that we're trying to reach. But that doesn't seem to really be a major struggle for the initiative. So each department will be working on its own plan, its own set of priorities and objectives. And as I said, it might include many of the same things that I just mentioned a moment ago. Almost every department wants more faculty chairs, better grad student support, and so on. So some things are fairly uniform across the college. So that's piece two, is that the department level, departments are working on, will be working on their plans, and will be working on their plans as well. The third piece is that we're developing a series of white papers which are overall more broadly cross-departmental or interdisciplinary in their focus. So, for example, we're developing a white paper. The idea here is to have somebody to show a donor who shows some potential interest in the concept. So a white paper around social science research commons, which we've already gotten a small seed grant from a donor to kick that off a little bit. Humanities Engagement Hub, we'll have a plan for that. Some coordinated activity across the Arts Quarter departments, be seeking some support for that. An International Research Institute, which has been the vision of Ron Krebs in the Political Science Department and Evelyn Davidizer in the Institute for Global Studies, and they've been talking with many people across the college and elsewhere about what this might look like. What might it look like to create a research institute for international studies in the College of Liberal Arts? And I think that's looking very promising and exciting. As I mentioned a moment ago, we'll seek support for the Career Readiness Initiative, which cuts across the whole college as well, and other areas as well. So that's the third piece of our planning that we're doing for the campaign. So we have these college level goals, buckets of goals. We have the departments working on plans, and then we're developing these white papers that really cut across a number of the units as well. So you'll be hearing a lot more about the campaign over the coming weeks and months. Many of you will be called into action to meet with potential donors, alums, and so on, to help us explain better than we can explain some of the initiatives, some of the ideas that you might have, and how it might excite a donor to think about investing in us, which is what ultimately we're asking them to do. They're investing in people, and we need to convince them that we're the right people for them to invest in. So that's where we are headed over the next few years. So I want to tie a little bit back as I begin to wrap up here and thinking about some of the comments I made at the beginning. I think that there could not be a better time for the liberal arts in terms of the kinds of things that we study and the kinds of things that we create. We're in a world of hyper-communication. We're in a world of multiple modes of communication. We're seeing rapid demographic and other transformational shifts in our economies and societies here and around the world. These are all the kinds of questions that we study, that we know about, and that we think about on a daily basis. We also know from talking with employers that far from the liberal arts mindset and liberal arts skill set seeming like it's kind of off to the side, these are actually the skills and the mindset that they're looking for. They're looking for students who can think creatively, think across boundaries, who can work well collaboratively, who understand diversity and inclusion, and so on. And all of this is embedded in our Career Readiness Initiative. So I'm very confident that we are helping our students to go out into a position where they can thrive, because we have employers telling us that that's what they are looking for as well. And even some of the trends in the economy, like trends in automation, for example, are things that are in some ways beneficial to the liberal arts. And I don't mean to downplay that, because obviously many people will be going through very wrenching challenges in their lives, and hopefully the knowledge of the liberal arts and our various disciplines can help work through that. But for our students who go out, there have been some recent studies done showing how well liberal arts skills align with the tech center, and how well liberal arts skills are, in a sense, a bit of an antidote from the threat of automation. That is to say, our students tend to end up in the kinds of positions that are least likely to be automated as that moves along. So in that sense, our students will be well positioned for success. So I think it's a good time. I used to say I thought it was a prime time for liberal arts, and then I started realizing nobody really thinks about prime time anymore, because nobody watches TV. So if you have a better phrase than prime time for liberal arts, I'm be happy to hear what that might be. So all of that is the good news, positive news. But I would be remiss not to note that there are also an array of challenges that are facing higher education as well, and we can't hide from those. We're not immune from those challenges. Let me just list a few for you. First, there is still a narrative out there that we have to wrestle with about the liberal arts that is not favorable toward the liberal arts study, liberal arts research, and so on. If you want to do something somewhat painful, just go into the comments section of any news article that in any way references the liberal arts, and you can get a quick dose of that some of the world doesn't think the way we do, to say about the value of the liberal arts. Now, I don't want to run my life based on the comments in a Star Tribune article, but it is out there, and it is something that we have to be actively, not defensive about, but just advocating for the importance of what we do and making it clear how it matters. Secondly, state support in the state of Minnesota, and many other states as well, is not likely to change terribly substantially over the coming years. The state does provide a lot of support for the university. It has been going up a bit the past few years, but it's still not back where it was in 2007. It may never get back to that point that it was in 2007, and that's a blunt reality that we have to wrestle with. There's a lot of competing interests at the state level, particularly on the healthcare side, and K-12 as well, that just make it hard. So that's at least a short-term to medium-term challenge. Third, there are some signs out there that there may be declining public trust in higher education and the efficacy of receiving a degree from a four-year institution. Fourth, right here close to home, we have budgetary challenges around the university system and right here on the Twin Cities campus, which is to say a lot of our fellow colleges and campuses are going through difficult times. And that in its own way puts a strain on the whole system, because you have to subsidize those gaps. We were the recipients of this some years ago when we were running substantial deficits that we couldn't pay for, and so we were receiving the subsidies from other units. But right now there are a lot of units across the Minnesota system that are struggling that way. So resources have to go out, as they are also trying to reform what they do. Resources will have to go out to those units to balance their budgets. the solution to some of these problems has been increasing tuition at the university. So you could say this year it didn't have any particular effect. We have record enrollments at the university, even in the face of a very significant tuition increase. I'm not sure that we really have enough data to know that that can continue. At the very least, we know publicly and legislatively there's a lot of sensitivity about tuition increases, so that creates some challenges for us as well as its accompanying issue of student debt and the growth in student debt. The U actually does pretty well in that regard. I believe it's 40% of our students, maybe a little over, graduate without any debt at all. And of the remaining students, the debt average is somewhere in the mid to upper 20s. So it's better than a lot of other situations. But it is still one of those issues that's out there that gets raised frequently. Demographically, there are fewer students of college age in Minnesota, or there will be over the coming 5 to 10 years, and in the surrounding states as well. So it is a smaller marketplace for students. There's just fewer students to go around, and you can't solve all that by bringing in more students from out of state, because that raises a whole different set of tensions and issues about the University of Minnesota and how many students from Minnesota are at the University of Minnesota. So there'll be some challenges there as well. Technology, as you know, is changing modes of teaching and will continue to do so, and we have to find ways to keep up with that change. We can't be in a position where students come to the university and are feeling like they had better technology in high school than they had when they came to the university where they're paying tuition. So that's going to be an issue for us going forward, but I think that one presents challenges but also presents many opportunities as well. So all of these pose challenges for us that we will have to confront. In the near term, we are prioritizing investments in our roadmap goals and in our academic mission, but these investments have to be sustainable in the long term, and some of those things that I just talked about challenge the sustainability of these. We are making what I would consider to be bold investments and judicious investments, relying on some of our carry forward and reserve funds, where we have a healthy carry forward and reserve. And you can do that a little bit, but you can't do that endlessly, or you have no carry forward and reserve to draw on that next time. As we're pushing through a lot of changes now and trying to help our departments get stronger and push through the roadmap, I think it makes sense to do it. But we have to be able to plan for the 3 years out and the 5 years out and so on, where you can't keep drawing off of it, or you won't have a substantial enough reserve fund to cover you through the storms of enrollment drops and other things that could potentially happen. So let me say one final thing by way of challenge and opportunity before I wrap up. CLA comprises a significant proportion of the university community. As I said before, 45% of the undergraduates, a large share of the graduate students, a large share of the faculty and staff as well. That means it's our job in CLA and our responsibility in CLA to drive the tone on this campus to one that values diverse backgrounds, viewpoints, and identities. We are much of the University of Minnesota, so we can't look at the university and say, wow, they're not handling that issue very well, of viewpoint diversity or background diversity or identity diversity and inclusion. So that's really on us. We will lead the tone for the whole university on that, and I mean all of us. Faculty, staff, and students will lead that tone. We'll lead it within our departments, and that's crucially important to start there. It has to start within the department, but then it's beyond that. It's beyond that as well. So we have that as our responsibility as the largest college on the campus to really drive the right tone and the right message. We're the ones that have to lead by example because we are a significant share of the university population. I want to thank all of you for the things that you do that make CLA successful, that put our students in a great position, and that make the communities that we work with thrive and tackle some of the challenges that they're facing as well. You are helping to prepare a new generation to address the world's toughest problems, and you're doing it you are trying to convey in them empathy and imagination, and give them the ability to lead with curiosity and compassion. You'll be training a new generation of scholars, business leaders, community advocates, artists, and innovators over the next many years. You'll be supporting career counselors, advisors, and mentors to help students translate their academic interests into professional opportunities. You'll cultivate more vibrant and inclusive on-campus communities, and you'll build a campus with porous borders that serves to be in partnership with our community. You'll be making discoveries that advance global perspectives and very grounded local solutions. Your work will ensure a bright future for CLA and for our communities and our stakeholders as we launch into our next 150 years starting next year. I am sincerely, immensely proud of the role that CLA plays. I am incredibly privileged to be working with the amazing faculty and staff here who are advancing and defending these important values and this important work that we do. Now, this sounds a little bit like the State of the Union address, but I am going to say the state of our college is strong. So our job collectively, and it's not just me, it's everybody, is to advocate for the liberal arts and to create the understanding among the people that we interact with, maybe those, particularly those who are a bit skeptical, that the questions that are pursued in the liberal arts are at the core of the future evolution of our economy, of our politics, and of our social world. That I believe to be fundamentally true. And with that, I thank you all for what you do for the College of Liberal Arts, and thank you for joining me today. Thank you.